He had observed his stunning wife navigate the ballroom for the past 30 minutes, ensuring that, with perfect timing, she stood as far from him as possible when the clock struck midnight. Amidst her affluent, self-absorbed colleagues, she became a mere object of desire, circulated among the executives at his workplace, receiving unwanted attention and affection from his privileged, foolish superior. He was aware of this since his company's New Year's Eve party had unfolded in the same manner for the last 2 years. In the initial year, he dismissed it, chalking it up to an excess of champagne. Last year, the unmistakable signal rang out clearly, prompting him to start making arrangements. As he felt a gentle pull on his coat, he turned to see Deirdre, the closest ally of Josephine and a fellow schemer. "Happy New Year, Mike," she declared, lifting her hand to draw his head down for their customary pity kiss. He lightly grazed her lips, then withdrew, gazing into her deep brown eyes. Deirdre was yet another prominent figure in society, a trust fund child akin to his wife, hailing from an even wealthier lineage than Joe's. He anticipated the familiar little smirk she often wore, a silent acknowledgement that she possessed insights beyond his reach, a trait shared with both his wife and his superior, rooted in their aristocratic backgrounds. Instead, he perceived two fresh feelings, compassion and worry. "Mike, lighten up a bit. She's simply sharing kisses in the splendid tradition of New Year's celebrations. She'll return shortly, perfectly fine, and she'll demonstrate once more just how deeply she cares for you." He regarded her with a hint of doubt. Deirdre attempted to provide him with comfort. "She truly cares for you, you realize? She possesses a lively spirit, full of energy and spontaneity, whereas you embody a more thoughtful and reserved demeanor. At times, she seeks the opportunity to connect with those who share her experiences, yet each moment spent with them deepens her gratitude for your presence." "All right, Deirdre, so that's the reason she dedicated all her time at her company's Christmas party beneath the mistletoe with her colleagues. We attend her Christmas party, where she spends the evening dancing with and kissing the top executives at her firm. And here tonight, at my firm's New Year's ball, she spends the entire evening dancing and now sharing kisses. No, engaging in intimate moments with the executives from my firm. So, by being connected with everyone at the party except for me, she is developing a newfound appreciation for me. Fascinating idea. Is it really a New Year's tradition to bestow a dozen kisses upon George the imbecile, or is that merely her method of expressing her affection for me? Since you know, she understands how much I dislike the little woman. I'll acknowledge this about Deirdre." She felt a twinge of embarrassment. She averted her eyes, attempting once more to meet my gaze. "Mike, I recognize your frustration, but it's important for you to grasp the situation. Honestly, Deirdre, I believe I truly grasp what you're saying. For the first time in our 5-year marriage, I believe I truly comprehend," I exclaimed. I pivoted away from her, made my way back to our table, retrieved the briefcase I had tucked beneath it, and pulled out a sizable, vividly wrapped package. With my back turned to her, I slipped the ring from my finger and secured it in the center of the bow she would need to untie to access the package. I turned back to Deirdre and extended the package toward her. "I am about to take my leave now. Kindly pass this along to your friend when she manages to break free from the hold of the men around her. Convey my wishes for a happy new year to her, and may she receive all that she truly deserves in 2025. I started to leave, but Deirdre grasped my arm. "Please stay, Mike. I will go retrieve her. She's indulged in a bit too much champagne once more. It's essential that you bring her back home." "No, Deirdre, I do not. She occupies a room at the hotel. She has spent the entire day captivating the attention of men while I focused on my tasks. Surely you are aware of all that, as you have been by her side. She possesses her own vehicle, her wardrobe, all the essentials she requires. I'm confident that at least one of the gentlemen she's engaged with will be more than willing to ensure her happiness. Or perhaps they all will. Don't you dare give me that look. You shared the same untruths with me last year. I allowed her this year to make her choice, and she has, just as I have. Farewell, Deirdre. It would certainly be a relief to part ways for good." As I exited the ballroom, I acknowledged Helen, the HR director, with whom I had shared the earlier part of the afternoon, while my boss and his associates busied themselves with the arrangements at the hotel. In truth, he was in the luxurious suite he had booked with the company credit card, sharing a moment with my wife. In fact, I ought to clarify that they were in the luxurious suite alongside my wife, and I possess the photographs and video to substantiate this. Helen does as well, and the chairman of the board will shortly. Once I left the ballroom, Helen and her husband approached the group of men gathered around Josephine. Deirdre navigated the throng of men, a number of whom were determined to bestow kisses upon her in a time-honored manner. A handful attempted to approach Helen, yet they appeared to be deterred by the intimidating glare of her husband, a former All-Pro lineman. She navigated her way through the throng to reach CEO George Burke and his companion just ahead of Deirdre. She halted her husband at a distance of about 6 feet and observed intently. Deirdre's anguished expression and piercing cries for her name drew Joe's gaze and interrupted George's hold. She cast a disapproving glance at her friend's panicked expression, while Helen wore a smile. Deirdre extended the brightly wrapped gift and spoke to Joe, who accepted the package, leaned in, and appeared to request Deirdre to say it again. "Mike has left this for you." "He has left, Joe. He observed your playful interactions throughout the evening, and when you began sharing kisses with various men, he handed me this package and walked away." Joe beamed. "Mike tends to have these small outbursts whenever I pay him less attention for just a few moments. I will return home, plead for his forgiveness, shower him with affection, and everything will be just fine. He adores me. Even in his anger, he still leaves my gift behind. Let's discover what it is." "Joe, I'm not sure this is a gift," Deirdre started, yet Joe was already focused on untying the ribbon to reveal what was inside the package. As the ring struck the ground, he halted, furrowed his brow, and inquired, "What is that?" George leaned down, retrieved it, extended it towards her, and grinned slyly. "Isn't this the wedding ring belonging to your husband?" She paused her frantic tearing of the paper, a look of confusion crossing her face as she reached for the ring. She gazed at Deirdre, who replied, "I attempted to convey that to you." With eager hands, Joe started to peel away the wrapping paper, revealing a pristine white gift box nestled within. With a sense of comfort, she smiled, shook the box, remarked on its weight, and started to slice through the scotch tape on each side using her fingernail. As the tape on the third side gave way, the box's contents tumbled out, spilling across the floor in disarray. She crouched in her knee-length gown to gather the glossy sheets that had scattered around her. Some individuals were crouched down, gathering the ones that had landed nearby. In an instant, all movement ceased. Joe's eyes widened in shock as she let out a piercing scream. "No!" Her cry captured the attention of those nearby, prompting more individuals to gather around them. Deirdre's eyes widened in astonishment. She looked up and noticed the expression of dread on George's face. He grabbed the glossy 8x10 color photo from the ground, pressed it against his expensive suit, and shouted, "What the hell, Joe?" With a volume that ensured all nearby could hear him. All gazes fell upon the scattered photos, revealing Joe in intimate moments with others, not her spouse. Countless images captured Joe and George together, alongside Joe with various executives from the firm where Mike was employed, as well as moments with Joe's colleagues and superiors. There weren't enough to fill the roles of the Kama Sutra, but Mike had skillfully chosen photos that demonstrated Josephine's appreciation for various romantic themes. Confronted by a collection of images capturing her escapades, Joe collapsed. She toppled backward, and it was only the impact with George's shoe that prevented her head from slamming against the tile floor, potentially leading to a concussion. Deirdre knelt beside her, cradling the back of her head with a gentle hand, lightly slapping her face as she called out in desperation, "Joe! Joe! Is everything okay, Joe? Engage with me, Joe. Are you okay?" As the two women remained on the floor, others started to gather the photos, their curiosity piqued as they examined each one. A woman suddenly pivoted and struck her husband with all her might, while he was absorbed in a photo he was examining. "You relentless deceiver, it's no surprise you fail to fulfill my needs." He gazed at her, momentarily speechless, until she swung her purse, striking him squarely in the right eye. He grasped his eye, let out a cry of agony, and then collapsed to the ground as she struck him in the groin with her closed-toe pump. The woman knelt and meticulously sifted through the scattered photos on the ground. She paused, looked up, and declared, "You women married to the management of Taylor, and son might want to grab some of these photos and take a look. I notice images of a few other husbands I'm familiar with, alongside those two unfaithful women. If you're looking to cut costs on your divorce attorney, reach out to me and I'll explore the possibility of securing a group rate for us. 9 other women knelt, scrutinizing the photos, while the men started to retreat. She held one up, announcing the presence of USB drives with great enthusiasm. There's no way to know what's contained within these. A stunning blonde shouted at a sharply dressed older gentleman, "You rotten jerk! Do you recall our prenuptial agreement? I will bring you to your knees financially." "Darling, I apologize. It held no significance. She persistently flirted with me, and eventually I succumbed. Yet it happened just that one time, and she couldn't hold a candle to you, and he begged." "Liar!" the blonde screamed, brandishing 2 more photos as proof. The blonde sprang up from the floor, approaching him with a fierce intensity in her gaze, brandishing the photos and unleashing a torrent of curses. He stepped back, then pivoted and dashed away as she approached. Another woman was weeping, her hand pressed against her chest, while she waved a photograph in the other. Her husband covered his eyes with his hand, and he was also weeping. A man pulled out a photo, presented it to the stunning woman before him, and exclaimed, "You're bi? What on earth? You deceitful trickster. You said I would never have my 3-way because you would never be with a woman." She blushed, pivoted, and dashed off, teetering unsteadily in her 4-inch heels. A woman selected a handful of photos from the collection, calling out names as she made her way to the center of the ballroom. A bewildered woman halted her, took a photo, gazed at it intently, and then turned to her husband with a look of fury. He started to pull back, while she advanced with a lively trot, brandishing the photo in her hand. The scene would unfold 5 more times, each instance providing those nearby with both a vivid auditory and visual experience of the aggrieved's plight. Jo is now awake, her gaze fixed on the surroundings, eyes glazed over in contemplation. A gentleman clad in a luxurious tuxedo knelt beside her. He inquired, "Are you okay?" With a curious gaze, she nodded at him. He inquired, "Who are you? How may I assist you?" "I'm Josephine Lord," she said with a heavy heart. "Yet I feel as though no one can assist me at this moment." "You're Josephine Reynolds Lord?" he asked, disbelief evident in his voice. She nodded and inquired, "I am. Who might you be?" The man presented her with a bundle of documents he had been holding, snapped her photo with his phone, and declared with emphasis, "I'm a process server. You have been officially notified, Josephine Reynolds Lord." The documents provided, along with the accompanying photographs and videos, substantiate the claims of infidelity outlined in Michael Morris Lord's divorce petition. He faced the larger assembly. "Esteemed audience, should you have missed the opportunity to peruse the photographs, you may easily obtain a copy of the divorce documents, as they are public records accessible online. A comprehensive list details the names of every individual with whom Jo the Hoe shared intimacy throughout the past year, including the locations and dates of these encounters. For a small fee, I can share a link to the Jo the Hoe website that thoroughly details her adventures since January 1st of last year. If you're interested in examining the details to see if your spouse had any physical connections with Jo, feel free to reach out to me through my website. For a small fee, I will provide you with a link to her site. For a small extra charge, I can offer digital copies of a participant's activities. This evidence will prove to be quite beneficial in a courtroom setting. I eagerly await your response." He bowed deeply and walked away, leaving behind a trail of tears, fears, and panic. He knew he would face serious consequences for this act, yet the compensation he received was substantial. Moreover, this was New York, and his office was situated in New Jersey, where his family wielded considerable influence. Jo reclined in the arms of her friend, the divorce papers still resting in her lap, her mouth agape in disbelief. She surveyed the expressions of those surrounding her, recognizing a mix of disdain, sympathy, fury, and apprehension. The profound admiration, desire, and envy that had filled her privileged existence were completely missing, and the weight of her loss and disgrace finally settled in. She collapsed against Deirdre, her face hidden in her friend's embrace, weeping uncontrollably. George Taylor commanded his subordinates to gather those cursed images and incinerate them. Fixing his gaze on Helen, he commanded, "I need a letter of reprimand from Mike Lord on my desk by Monday, with his termination papers placed beneath it." With an impassive demeanor, Helen remarked, "I regret to inform you, Mr. Taylor, that Mr. Lord has resigned this afternoon. He submitted his 2 weeks' notice with the leave you approved last week, gathered all his supplies and materials, and left the premises. I refuse to accept his resignation. After the reprimand, I will let him go. He'll never find a place in this industry again," he exclaimed. "Once more, I apologize, Mr. Taylor, but he had a meeting with the chairman of the board prior to his departure, and your father agreed to his resignation. Mr. Lord has secured a position with one of the firms he was previously consulting for. With your consent, sir." Taylor's face flushed a deep crimson, prompting those around him to worry he might have a stroke as he angrily muttered curses directed at his father and Mike Lord. Helen and her husband observed his bewilderment with amusement, gripping each other's hands in joy, all while keeping their faces perfectly composed, naturally. Mike Lord was gliding out of NYC in the sleek new four-wheel drive Chevrolet High Country Suburban. He had placed a special order for the SUV in the fall, right when the new models were released, and it was delivered to him earlier in the afternoon. OnStar indicated that the journey to his new residence in Austin, Texas, would require 24 hours and 32 minutes of driving time along the selected route. He understood it would truly require most of a week, as the country boy from Idaho was set to immerse himself in the culture of the rural states he would journey through. Upon arriving in Virginia, he planned to forsake the interstates, journey along the country roads celebrated by John Denver, and explore the quaint towns in Carolina that Mary Chapin Carpenter immortalized in her songs. He would savor the flavors of homemade jellies and jams from roadside stands and quaint local shops, dining where the locals gathered, away from the interstates and the frenetic pace of life he had come to despise. The division of their checking and savings accounts occurred only after he made the purchase of his SUV, as she consistently outspent him tenfold each month throughout their marriage. An $88,000 vehicle hardly balanced the scales. Yet, he found pleasure in spending a portion of her money to acquire it. According to the terms he proposed, he would retain his investments and retirement funds, while she would maintain her own. He was offering her the penthouse apartment and promised not to pursue her trust fund if she agreed to his generous terms and signed the divorce papers within 10 days. The radio played the finest traditional country tunes on Sirius XM's Roadhouse station. Joe detested country music, just as she abhorred the oldies. Thus, his upcoming destination would be timeless vinyl. He had become his own person, no longer the oblivious, submissive partner she had shaped him into for the past 2 years. He seized the reins of his existence when the ball dropped on New Year's Eve last year, dedicating the entire year to organizing his life. Taylor and his son might endure his absence, yet he was deeply skeptical about it. Under George's poor leadership, and lacking the many design enhancements and patents that Mike had contributed over the last 5 years, he anticipated a downfall within a year or two. He grinned at the idea, aware that his efforts had contributed to over half of the new sales and profits from the past year. He had more innovative concepts and enhancements prepared to unveil as soon as his new venture was ready to take off. Randolph Taylor, George's father, and the current chairman, would probably opt to sell the business rather than let it face a downfall. Yet, before that could unfold, George would find himself laid bare before the world, revealing the inept charlatan he truly was. The thought of that event brought a smile to his face. This evening, he unveiled George and his unfaithful wife as the immoral and unscrupulous outcasts of society. In the coming year, he would reveal George's shortcomings as a businessman, as his new company crushed the old one like a bug splattered on a windshield, a thought that brought a smile to his face. He longed to be a silent observer when Josephine's parents discovered his escapade at the ball. Helen had already reached out to share how beautifully it had come together. Watching her scatter the photos across the ballroom exceeded his wildest imagination, even though he had cleverly designed the box to fall apart when the tape was severed on any 3 sides. From the very beginning, her parents regarded him with disdain, their disappointment palpable when their beloved, flawless daughter decided to wed him. Ultimately, he lacked an Ivy League education. The fact that an engineering degree from the Colorado School of Mines and a master's from the University of Michigan rendered him highly sought after in his field was inconsequential. A liberal arts degree from Brown held far more prestige than such a conventional background. He smiled, lost in thought about the devastation he had caused and the chaos he would unleash in times to come. Deirdre and her husband Albert brought Josephine back to their home. Upon entering and surveying the surroundings, Jo began to weep once more. On her journey home, she found herself going over her presentation to Mike in her mind. She would clarify that her affairs held no significance for her, nor did they harm their marriage. They were merely pastimes or attempts to sway choices that impacted her and Mike in their pursuit of a better life. The recreational intimacy only benefited them as well, she would clarify. It helped her regain control over her desires when they were overwhelming, and she discovered new ways to delight her husband and invigorate their romantic life. It seemed absurd even to her, and she was certain Mike wouldn't believe a word of it. To be honest, he was quite rigid when it came to his commitments in marriage. Even joking about exchanging or adding excitement to their marriage through role-playing with others infuriated him. Why would she believe he would fall for this nonsense she intended to peddle to him? She felt deep down that her marriage was over. However, stepping into their apartment and discovering that all his belongings were missing undeniably made the consequences clear. She collapsed onto the floor, sobbing heart-wrenching tears and lamenting her own hubris. She found herself at a loss for words regarding her actions, as she had never anticipated facing the consequences. And if she did, her gentle, unsuspecting husband might be convinced to overlook her transgressions. For 3 years, she thrived, but tonight he reduced her home to ashes, taking her reputation down with it. Time flew by for Mike during the week. He meticulously cloned his new phone before extracting the SIM card, discarding the old one into the city's snow, all to establish a fresh line of communication. Yet, no one could disrupt his passage through the historic South toward his new residence in Texas. The emails he had arranged had been sent out throughout the week. Partner after partner had received a tailored message with an attachment, and union after union had crumbled into ashes. The thought of that outcome brought a smile to Mike's face. The message to Deirdre's husband was dispatched yesterday. Reflecting on Al's reply brought a wide grin to Mike's face. Jo acknowledged her own accountability, yet Deirdre's vivid sharing of the satisfaction she found in her own infidelities, along with her urging for Jo to embrace similar adventures, had undeniably swayed Jo's choice. On the 4th day, in the heart of New York City, Deirdre and Jo found themselves lounging on the couch in their apartment. The apartment now belonged to Al, who had evicted Deirdre after receiving his email and viewing the video. It featured 5 parts of intimate encounters and a thought-provoking dialogue with Jo, where they recounted their adventures and delights, naming their lovers while occasionally chuckling about their oblivious husbands. Albert had sent copies of that conversation to the wives of the men mentioned by the women, as he was familiar with most of them. The fire danced, and Albert grinned as he pondered the flickering flames. George had not fared any better. His father abruptly dismissed him and cut him out of the family inheritance as well. He dismissed all the upper management accountable for the firm's tarnished reputation due to their actions and took on the role of CEO, while his newly appointed vice president for talent acquisition development, Helen, sought out top executives from around the world. Mike drove past the exit for Martin Luther King, ready to make the turn onto Cesar Chavez. As he navigated past the Austin Convention Center, he caught a glimpse of Lady Bird Lake on his left, then crossed Congress Avenue, heading towards the upscale high-rise condo his new company had arranged at 70 Rainey. The condo's rent was covered for 6 months, allowing him the opportunity to search for the home adorned with trees and a lawn that he desired so deeply. Once he found his footing, he would get a dog and start searching for a partner, someone reliable, who would cherish the idea of building a home for him and their future children. His new partners had organized a barbecue where they intended to present him as recently divorced, assuring him that there would be an abundance of eligible women in attendance. In the midst of the chaos in NYC, the flames of betrayal intensified as exposed partners cast blame on one another, while those who felt wronged revealed their insights about fellow wronged partners. Helen ensured Mike was always in the loop. He gazed at the ever-growing flames of the great New York City fire he had ignited, a smile creeping across his face. And thus, we arrive at the conclusion of today's tale. Did it align with your expectations, or did it veer off in an unexpected direction? I would love to know what you think. Feel free to express your thoughts in the comments below, and let's spark a discussion. If this tale captivated you, be sure to give that like button a tap. If you're new to our space or haven't hit that subscribe button yet, now is the ideal moment to become part of our community. Every day I deliver intriguing and engaging narratives that will capture your imagination. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and enable notifications to stay updated on everything you don't want to miss. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to our next encounter.